Commissioner Church,
Here.
Commissioner Kong,
Here.
Commissioner Leffel,
Here.
Commissioner Oglesby,
Here.
Commissioner Poitras,
Here.
Commissioner Velasquez,
Here.
Vice Chair Craig,
Here.
and Chair Gorley.
Present.
Thank you.
Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. General public comments. Anyone may address the commission briefly about items not already on the agenda. Anyone from the public this afternoon?
Chair, no hands are raised.
The Honorable Megan Hunter.
I know you're probably tired of me making public comment. My name is Megan Hunter, and I'm the city manager for the city of Soledad. And I did just want to give you a brief update of the work that is happening with Miramonte. We did have a meeting with LAFCO and Ag Land Trust to talk about some of the properties that have been identified as part of the process. Some property was considered okay because there was a verified water source. Other property, there was a question from Ag Land Trust and LAFCO if it had a long-term sustainability water source. So just to let you know, the developers did hire a consultant to help do a hydrological study, which is now, I think, being requested to determine if the area closer to Soledad has a sustainable water source. Although we haven't completed it, we hope to have it completed in the next week or so. But the consultant noted that the aquifer that the Miramonte property is coming from and the property of the conservation easement is the same aquifer. So regardless if that's kind of the sustainable water source is a determination, it's really a like for like change. And so we just hope that we're not getting too bogged down in some of the water understanding, because some of the initial property we identified was discounted because I think the GSA, the groundwater sustainability folks, found that it wasn't, that there was going to be an overdraft issue in the future. So it's a little challenging. I do want to say I appreciate the executive officer's willingness to work with us on location, given some of these challenges with the conservation easement. But as you're thinking about your ag mitigation policy, I think some of these things should really be thought through, because it hasn't been so easy to fulfill this requirement. Even though I know there's a lot of farmland out there, if we're discounting farmland because of some of these factors, it's going to be harder and harder to find conservation easements. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Do we have anybody on Zoom? Are we broadcasting Zoom?
Chair, we're broadcasting on Zoom and no hands are raised.
We'll close public comments at this time. This is right over here. Public comments of closed session. Excuse me. Are we going to recess to closed session before we have public comment on closed session?
No, I was going to note that as a correction to the agenda that we wouldn't be going into closed session, as there's no update to share at this time on that matter.
Great. Thank you. Let's move down to our consent calendar. We need to pull and separate out item 5 for separate discussion. Items 1 through 4. Do we have any comments from the commission? And then I'll open it up for public. Commissioner Leifel.
I'd like to pull items that have to do with the finances. So number 3, please.
Okay, let's just go ahead and discuss that now, then we can move the agenda.
All right. Well, during finance, we discussed the fact that We are not showing our long-term obligation on unfunded liabilities, and our accounting firm that does all of our bookkeeping and accounting was going to get back to us. I have not seen anything, and our next Budget Finance Committee meeting is November 8th. So I'm not ready to approve these.
So just the balance sheet or all of it?
The balance sheet particularly.
Okay, bless your heart. Do we have anybody else with any questions on that?
I just think we need to put it off to our next meeting until we get some answers on what we're going to do.
Okay, very well.
Unless our executive director has discussed with him and he's come up with a valid reason of why LAFCO wouldn't show it.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the commission. Yes, we have had a follow-up conversation with CalPERS, in particular our actuarial, regarding the CalPERS retirement plans. And we do plan to discuss that information with our Budget and Finance Committee at our early November meeting, which is in about 2 weeks or so. And Jonathan, did you want to add anything from that conversation?
Just that it was a productive meeting with CalPERS, and we'll be able to provide an update on CalPERS liabilities to the committee. It's just orally speaking, it's hard to give an update without the numbers right now, but we'll provide that fully to the committee.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move that we approve items 1 through 4 and not move item 5 at this time.
Chair, that would be items 2 through 4.
Excuse me, 2.
A point of order, Chair.
Yes.
I thought we pulled item number 3.
Oh, you're right. Okay. I'm going to strike my motion. Do we have another motion on the?
I would move that we approve items 2 and 4 on the consent agenda.
Second, Craig.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed is no. Or is anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you. We pulled item 5 for separate consideration. Let's go ahead and, Executive Director, please.
Thank you, Chair Gorley.
I'm sorry, Chair. I thought we pulled item number 3. I thought Mary Ann pulled item number 3.
So I think the motion was, item 3, we were going to bring it back at the next meeting. The maker of the motion, is that true?
My motion was just to approve 2 and 4 and to open up the discussion on 3,
Okay.
or we can put it all to the next meeting. That's up to all of you. I know how I'll vote on it.
So do we have an action on item 3 on the consent calendar?
I would move that we do not accept any financials until our accounting staff, our accountants and our staff understand the CalPERS liability.
Second, for the purpose of discussion.
It's been moved and seconded to pull 3 until our next calendar meeting.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Being none, motion carries. We'll now move on to number 5 for our Executive Director.
Thank you, Chair Gorley. This report is informational only. It provides information about anticipated agenda items that the Commission will likely be considering in the next 6 months or so. Today, we received an update from Soledad City Manager Megan Hunter regarding one of the items pertaining to the City of Soledad, which is on page 2, item number 3. And so, Jonathan, if you could please provide that updated information to the commission. Thank you.
The updated information is, this is regarding the Hacienda Apartments potential out-of-agency service extension. And a few weeks ago, the City Council for the City of Soledad received an update from consultants, and the City Council expressed concerns about ensuring that the city was made whole in terms of costs of this project. The council was concerned about the condition of the property, that the property's been maintained in a poor condition. And when the owner was presented with an offer to purchase the property to combine with the adjacent Camphor Apartments, they had declined. The city just notes that there is quite a bit of work that needs to be done on the county's end for this project. It's primarily in the county's, it is in the county's jurisdiction. And currently the city does not plan to move forward until the county takes the lead on this project. So we'll make sure the report is updated next month with this new information.
Is this strictly informational, or do you need an action on it?
This is informational only. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion on item number 5 on the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, been moved and second to approve informational item number 5 on our consent calendar. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Being none, motion carries. Thank you. Old business, review LAFCO's policies and implementation practices for agricultural preservation and mitigation. Kate?
Thank you, Chair Gorley, members of the commission. This item is a continued review and discussion of the commission's adopted policy and implementation practices for agricultural preservation and mitigation, primarily in connection with city annexations of farmland. As background information and context, if you could please refer to agenda item number 6 in your meeting packet. That contains a short staff report. We have also attached information that you have seen at the August 28th meeting, which contained the full text of the Commission's adopted policy for the preservation of open space and agricultural lands. It contained a copy of staff's June 26, 2023 presentation to the Commission on LAFCO's policies and implementation practices for ag mitigation. And it also contains a table that summarized agricultural mitigation that has been carried out with LAFCO approvals of city annexations since approximately the year 2000. To summarize why we are discussing agricultural mitigation today, first is the basic concept of ag mitigation. When farmlands are being converted to development to meet the needs of cities for housing, economic development, and other community needs, agricultural mitigation can offset that impact by placing permanent protection on other farmlands in the area. We are engaged in this review of a longstanding LAFCO agricultural preservation policy. The policy was first adopted by the Monterey LAFCO Commission in 1979, and then updated in 2010. Improvements to the policy may result from this review, and so that's why we're engaged in the process at this time. As to why this is relevant to our LAFCO, the Cortesing-Knox-Hertzberg Act contains a legislative mandate to each LAFCO to balance the preservation of agricultural lands with the need for orderly growth and development. The legislative purposes are shown up on in the slide above you and in front of you. And then we also have more detailed state mandates that are listed in the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act. And some of those are also shown on the slide here in terms of discouraging urban sprawl, preserving open space and prime agricultural lands, and balancing the preservation of open space and ag lands, which is considered to be of state interest, with the promotion of orderly development. The state of California also authorizes and directs each LAFCO to adopt local policies that encourage and provide for planned, well-ordered, efficient urban development patterns with consideration to preserve open space and ag lands within those patterns. So we would like to, at this time, take a few moments and request our general counsel to discuss the legal foundations for Monterey LAFCO's policy. So, Reed, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. As you see, well, maybe you could put that back up. I don't have all the citations available, but they were thrown and peppered throughout this slideshow. And it's correct to say that it's unique that LAFCO has a statutory commandment to address and consider agricultural balancing with respect to development applications. So it's a unique place for LAFCO to sit in the law. Not everyone else has an affirmative commandment to get involved in that manner, but LAFCO does. And the existing policy that was adopted by this commission in 2010, albeit with different membership. And the language that you see in that policy is written in a very specific way. There is a competing and a little bit of tension between both being required to assess and analyze how we can ensure orderly growth and development while preserving ag land, but also a commandment that this commission shall not directly regulate land use. So there's some tension here. We have to address and consider and evaluate options without creating black and white lines that would otherwise constrain or guide exactly how development occurs. So a good way to think about this is a subdivision map act tells you how large a lot needs to be, how splits can occur, shapes and sizes, things like that. We can't make a regulation like that. That would be directly regulating subdivisions, and there's a pretty clear commandment here not to do that. Now, the area gets grayer when we talk about what does it mean to directly regulate land use. If we were to say, for example, that there is a firm requirement of X to Y, a mathematical formula to apply with respect to size of parcels that need to come in or what mitigation ratios need to exist, that would likely be a little bit too far on directly regulating because you're creating parameters that would apply. So the policy as written by the commission back in 2010 is broad, and it gives a lot of discretion to this commission. So there's nothing in our current policy that says it must be 2-to-1, it must be 1-to-1, it must be 1/2-to-1. It does say that you have to analyze and address all of these factors that we're required to by state law and to present a proposal that addresses that. And this commission has the discretion with different times and different eras and different circumstances to say what was acceptable in the past is different than what's acceptable in the present. But they do need to go through that analysis. So in this particular case, the legal foundations are a state mandate because this is an issue of statewide importance. I don't know how many of you have home rule cities or any experience with home rule cities, but they can sometimes override state concerns and use what's called this home rule. That doesn't apply here. The state has declared this is a statewide interest. You cannot supersede us with respect to the issue of balancing this. The policy was written to give this commission more power. So if you were to present a more direct, linear, algebraic equation for how ag mitigation needs to occur, you'd actually be tying your own hands. You'd be less free and have less discretion than what you currently have. So that's why the policy was written as the way it was. The other things I think I would have to say, as I've read and reviewed both the comment letters that have come in and also staff report associated with this, is the issue of timing seems to be an issue of concern. One of the things that I would float out there is that this commission does have an obligation to go through the statutory commandment, to go through the analysis and to consider and evaluate. To not go through that process would appear to be advocating that responsibility. So I appreciate the desire to make decisions at later in time when it might be easier, but for purposes of what this state commandment is to this commission, is to consider and evaluate those things. So that's one topic I'm sure that we'll have some follow-up and questions on, but I'm here for any of your questions, and I'm here to help you through this decision-making process, and happy to jump in at any time. I'll turn that back over to Kate now.
Thank you, Reed. Both the CKH, the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, and Monterey LAFCO's own policy do provide for that broad, high-level guidance, as Reed has discussed, that agricultural preservation is an important priority, but neither the state law nor the policy gives specific direction on implementation. Because of this, the details of how agricultural mitigation gets carried out is more a function of implementation practices, not something that is specified or prescribed by policy. And up on the screen here in a moment, we'll be showing what some of the policies are, or practices are, that have been actions taken by this commission to implement both state law, state mandate, and our own local policies. Some of the key aspects of LAFCO's practices, of this LAFCO's practices, have been, number one, that agricultural mitigation is carried out at the time of annexation, and that's done as a condition of approval prior to final recordation of any annexation. And this has been a consistent LAFCO practice since at least the 1990s. Furthermore, in terms of conventional practices of this LAFCO, the preference has been that ag mitigation is handled as a matter of direct placement of permanent conservation easements on specific sites. That is far more typical to date than paying an in lieu fee that would fund acquisition of future easements by another party. Over time, there has been flexibility by this LAFCO on the mitigation acreage ratios. Generally, that has been in the realm of 1-to-1 or up to 2-to-1, occasionally 3-to-1, depending on circumstances. And it's also well within the Commission's authority, as Reed has discussed, given that broad authority that the Commission has to require no mitigation at all. And an example of where that might be appropriate is if the Commission was considering an annexation that would be for a 100% deed restricted affordable housing project. The Commission could analyze, evaluate the considerations, and determine that no ag mitigation at all is required. And again, you have that freedom and that flexibility under the local LAFCO policy. In terms of implementing ag mitigation, we touch here in this slide on three of the main elements that come into focus. Reed has already mentioned the timing of implementing mitigation requirements. I'll come back to that in a moment. I've provided an example of where the Commission could allow an exemption from any mitigation at all. And there is definitely flexibility on ratios. In addition, there's flexibility on the approach, whether it be easements versus in lieu fee payments. But again, our preference over time has been to secure the easements. There's also flexibility on where and how to execute the mitigation. how close to the lands that are being annexed. So these are, there can also be consideration of other community benefits such as 100% deed restricted affordable housing project. So our commission is obliged to consider a lot of factors here and has considerable leeway in implementing its practices. Of these 3 items, as Reed has mentioned, the matter of timing has been increasingly clear as a major decision point for LAFCO going forward. Since at least 2010, LAFCO's consistent practice has been to require agricultural mitigation to be fully identified and put in place as part of the LAFCO process for the city's annexation of farmland, and that must be completed before any annexation is recorded and takes effect. I'd like to take a moment here and discuss the status of some parallel activities that are going on in our communities. That is the status of County of Monterey and some works that's going on right now by the Salinas Valley cities. And you've heard some of these updates over the last few months, so here is the latest. County staff is continuing to refine its own draft program and ordinance. The county's intention is to apply mitigation to projects taking place in the unincorporated county. These would be lands that are going to be developed, but that are not near a city, and that would just be fully developed in the unincorporated County of Monterey. The county's draft program and ordinance will come to the County Planning Commission next month on November 9th. That county program will provide additional information for the commission to take into consideration when you, the commissioners, consider changes to LAFCO's own policy and practices. In addition, the city manager, city mayors, city community development group is actively continuing to hold productive meetings. Those meetings have included LAFCO staff since August, and they also include county staff representation. The goal of that group, I believe, is the goal of developing a coordinated approach to implement ag mitigation for future annexations to the cities. This is a very active, ongoing series of meetings that are taking place, and it's been very helpful to have an open dialogue with the parties about the various issues, some of which Reed and I have touched on today. I'm hopeful that this city organized group will work towards developing a set of guiding principles that each of the 5 Salinas Valley cities can adopt as to how ag mitigation should apply to future annexations. I'm hopeful that the County of Monterey will be able to consider that work in their own activities. And I'm also hopeful that when the city's work is completed, that the commission could consider modifying LAFCO's current policy to be in alignment with some portion of the city group's recommendations. That's our hope. However, it's also clear now that some of the city working group recommendations may fundamentally be at odds with the commission's consistent practices for implementing agricultural mitigation, most specifically with regard to the central issue of the timing of implementation. This was made very clear in the information that was was distributed by the City of Gonzales staff at last week's meeting of the city's working group. And that information then was transmitted directly to our commission last week. So you all have that. Part of that information was a memorandum from the Vista Lucia project team. It indicates strongly that going forward, the city of Gonzales will continue to advocate for LAFCO to step back from requiring ag mitigation to occur upfront as part of the LAFCO annexation process, and to instead defer to the city to carry out ag mitigation as part of the city permitting processes long after annexation is completed. The Vista Lucia project is a major 770-acre annexation project. It's listed each month as part of our anticipated agenda items, and we expect that the city will be submitting that application for annexation to the commission as early as 2024, sometime next year. So it becomes clear then that at least one city, if not others, are interested in changing LAFCO's policy, changing our practices with respect to the timing of implementation, and that this is front on now a major decision point for our commission to take into consideration. And what better time than as part of this policy review today. We as your staff, I as your executive officer, view this timing matter as an essential function of LAFCO's role in implementing agricultural mitigation. And so I am asking for your input today. So in conclusion, as Reed and I have discussed today, the commission is an independent body. You do have authority over annexations. You do have and will continue to have the independent discretion to decide how and when and if to apply agricultural mitigation requirements to city annexations, to proposed city annexations of farmland. Those authorities and those responsibilities are not in dispute. They're embedded in state law. Today's meeting is an opportunity to start a conversation with this commission to focus on the single most important decision relating to this policy. And that is the key decision that is up for discussion about maintaining your authority to keep the timing for ag mitigation as part of the LAFCO annexation process. I recommend that the commission not abdicate its responsibility, even if you can abdicate it. To do so would be incompatible with what this commission is charged to do under state law. I would recommend that as part of the conversation today, that our commission informally affirm its responsibility, reassert its commitment and authority to maintain ag mitigation as part of the LAFCO annexation process. Beyond that, this is not an action item by any means, but it is an open conversation. So in addition to a conversation by and with the commission, I welcome, of course, a conversation with the valued community members that we have here today, community leaders, and others that are not here today. I believe that we need to give more time for the city working group to complete its work. They're still at early stages, but are making good headway. And I'm recommending today that the commission take public input, consider and discuss the information you have before you today, and continue this item to your January meeting. That will provide time for the city working group to continue to develop its own set of recommendations. And then once we know what those recommendations are, the commission will have clarity and be in a good position to move forward and further evaluate and potentially make changes to its own ag preservation policy and to the implementation practices that have been developed in past decades. So thank you for considering this, and I'm here to answer any questions as well as Jonathan, and thank you.
I think I'm going to open this up for public comment first. Anyone from the public?
Well, Mr. Smith, when he went to Washington, was a filibuster. I think I have 3 minutes, so I hope I can do this. I just would like to share that the city of Gonzales, and actually the cities, I don't believe we have a fundamental concern or an objection to agricultural mitigation as a policy. We think it's great. It's our lifeblood, it's our economy, it's jobs, it's everything. One-to-one, as you have it, we don't have any objection to the policy. But the practice and the timing of the implementation is key and critical to us, and it's a big factor. And that's why the materials that we've shared with you independently and also through the executive director really speak to some policies we've laid down about, well, the city has adopted its own ordinance for mitigation policy, but the timing is in our city, and the general plan actually has it as a policy. So we can't actually have a consistent all-at-once policy paid all at once when our general plan says even those lands that are slated for development, keep them in agricultural production as long as possible so that they have the jobs and they've got the revenue and they have the food coming out. And our ordinance allows that through when someone presents a final map and they're getting ready to turn the soil so that it can no longer grow anymore, and they're going to put pipes in the ground, that's the time that we say, have you done your agricultural mitigation? And we're not going to let you break ground until you've done that. And that's when we require it. And because to the same point that we needed a large LAFCO approval for the large acreage so that we can plan the cost of infrastructure, pipes, sewer, police, and sheriff services, we're not going to build it overnight. And we can't build it overnight. We'll be lucky with 100 homes absorption in a year. And so having our master developer have to cut a check or find lands, and oh my goodness, the pain that's going through Soledad and Miramonte right now, if we are in that same boat of do it all up front before you can annex, we're not going to have anything built. But the way it happens is you get a tentative map approved. Someone says, as a builder, I might like to buy 200 lots worth, please, and I'm going to propose a final map. And then we can measure what the mitigation is, the agricultural mitigation on those 200 acres, and we keep that developer in interest and wanting to move forward, and they know the cost for what their development is. But for these lands that won't be built on for a decade or more, maybe even 2 decades, right? 3,000 units, and we need to plan for that. And we have water and sewer and all these services. If the expense of having to pay for that is required up front, we're not going to get anything.
So we went beyond your 13 minutes already.
My 13 minutes.
Thank you, Tavern. I want to wrap it up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I did want to have in front of you a policy alternative that's in front of you that shows about phase timing and options and a slate of options. So we don't have a fundamental issue with ag mitigation, but the timing and the practice and the way conditions are written at LAFCO to be, we would hope to be consistent with the city's policy.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Megan Hunter, City Manager of City Soledad. So why we're trying to rush this process is because we're trying to catch up with what the county is doing. And I would submit that LAFCO should have its own set of rules, not try to follow the county. If this is going to apply to areas of the county that aren't meant for annexation, then I think what's more important is for LAFCO to align with the 5 Salinas Valley cities policies. And, if we have more time to kind of factor it in, that would be helpful. And I think there's a couple of issues that Tavin.
Yeah. I thought it's referred to like portrait mitigation. Yeah. So I'm going to send to them. Hold on. Let me. Who's?
If you can hear us, we can hear you. If you're on Zoom, if you could mute yourself, please.
So I think there are a lot of different issues that we've confronted in terms of the Miramonte project that have been discussed ad nauseum in terms of finding ag mitigation that meets the requirements of LAFCO. What I would say that has been challenging is not knowing upfront what it is that LAFCO is looking for and what kind of documentation you need in order to make that decision, so that we've been kind of asked to provide more and more information to determine whether or not the property identified was acceptable. So again, we don't disagree with ag mitigation policy, but it would be helpful to have a checklist. It would be helpful if LAFCO does allow for flexibility. And then I do think that the timing issue is really important because making projects pencil, these are a lot of upfront costs. I mean, I know because I work all the time in housing that those can actually, those upfront costs can cause a project not to happen. And in the South County, in Salinas as well, we have a lot of RENA numbers we have to produce. So if we're not flexible, we might have the impact, LAFCO might have the impact of forcing us not to build those housing units and not building the housing we need for our residents, and including farm workers. So I'm hoping that LAFCO continues to remain flexible. I would like to divorce the policy from the county's policy, let the county move forward, and LAFCO work closely with the 5 Salinas Valley cities to come up with policy that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Anyone else from the public this afternoon?
Chair,
Anybody on Zoom?
There is a hand raised on Zoom. Gabriel Sanders, could you unmute and provide your comment?
3 minutes, please, Gabriel.
You got it. My name is Gabriel Sanders. I'm the Director of Housing and Community Development for the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. And I just want to echo the words that were just shared by Tavin and Megan in terms of making sure that the development occurs in their annexations, and especially in the case of the affordable housing that needs to occur in accordance with Soledad's inclusionary housing ordinance and any inclusionary housing ordinance that comes to be in the city of Gonzales to support affordable development on the annexed land. It is a really important factor, this ag mitigation policy, because the incentive up front, knowing that you can defer the mitigation process and the expense of that up until the point of breaking ground, is an extremely important one, especially if you have to incorporate the cost of affordable development into your plan as a developer. So I would encourage LAFCO to work with those 2 cities to make sure that this policy is, wow, that was a cool color effect. Work with these 2 cities to make sure that whichever policy is adopted here, or whichever one is deferred to, makes it as easy as possible for developers to get their plans approved, and make sure that they're as financially viable as possible, especially when they include affordable housing. And in general, deferring fees and exactions, such as an ag mitigation policy, deferring that until breaking ground is going to make it a lot easier for a developer. So I'll leave it to those two in each of their cities to determine what the policy is ideally for their cities. But I would encourage LAFCO to collaborate with them in terms of finding a policy or finding the border between where LAFCO policy takes precedence and the individual cities of Soledad and Gonzales take precedence. So please take their requests into consideration. It's very important, not just for the overall development of those annexations eventually, but especially for affordable housing development in the Salinas Valley, in Soledad and Gonzales. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else on Zoom?
Chair, no hands are currently raised.
Okay, let's move it back to the dais, and this is a workshop, so Honorable Mayor Craig.
Is this a workshop? It's an item on an agenda, it looks like to me.
Okay.
And in fact, I'll start off. I wasn't actually going to start off with that, but I will, since that word was used. We talked in the last meeting about having a workshop specifically on this. And I know that, Ms. Hunter identified that there's a sense of urgency to keep up with what the county is doing. This is scheduled to go to the Planning Commission in November. So I would like to see the implementation of what we talked about in the last meeting and gave direction to staff in the last meeting to have an actual workshop on this. And theoretically, since we don't have a meeting in November, I think we could do it in November. I'll start off just by acknowledging that this came about because of, well, I don't want to say because of, but it was brought to LAFCO's attention by a letter written to the Gonzales City Council back in March. So while LAFCO has very broad policies, we, as a board, through the executive director, went on record at a very early phase. This was now 8 months ago, regarding the ordinance that they were bringing forward. I'll read a quote from the weekly and then I'll read a quote from the actual letter itself. It says, "Yet the ordinance falls shy of recommendations made by LAFCO in a March 31st comment letter to the Gonzales City Council. The agency warned that it lacked the county's more robust standards, such as a higher 2-to-1 ratio of preserved ag land to converted acreage. The city's ordinance allows a 1-to-1 ratio. Gonzales is also providing developers the option to pay in lieu fees to the city, whereas the county has identified conservation easements as its preferred agricultural mitigation strategy." And in the letter that was in our April agenda packet, there's a section of it that identifies, as written, the proposed city ordinance does not appear to be coordinated with the more robust agricultural preservation and mitigation standards drafted by the county. For example, the county's preliminary draft ordinance would require applicants to attempt to secure nearby permanent conservation easements as the preferred agricultural mitigation strategy before allowing payment of in lieu fees. The county's preliminary draft would also require 2-to-1 mitigation for a designated prime farmland that is being converted to urban uses. The city's draft ordinance does not appear to include these features. And the reason why I bring up these two things is because prior to this even coming to this board, LAFCO and the county started to create an alignment of pretty restrictive requirements of ag mitigation to include 2-to-1. And I would say, even though since then we've had multiple discussions about it and we talk about the ease and the flexibility of what LAFCO's actual requirements are, we had an executive director that was leaning and pushing towards what the county's ag mitigation was trying to accomplish. So I'm acknowledging that because then the next step of that is all 5 cities coming to LAFCO saying, please hold the brakes. We're really struggling to get housing done. And so this board was caught a little off guard, and, you know, we sort of unpacked that a little bit and said, nope, we have really wide and broad policies, but there's a reason you have all 5 cities in our chambers. It's because they're concerned that they're not going to get any housing built based on the fact that the county's mitigation of 2 to 1, LAFCO's leaning into that. So they're asking us to have a broader discussion about easing up some of our language so that there is more flexibility that the cities can use, the 1-for-1, creating exemptions, you know, if there's a higher ratio. So I know that's a lot to unpack. I tend obviously to look at the broader picture of why we're here. I understand that LAFCO has its own set of rules. I'm not here to, you know, advocate for cities or counties, but I do think if we are waiting to find out what the county is going to do, then that's just as bad as if we're waiting to find out what the cities are going to do. I think we should be adopting our own policies at this point. But I'm disappointed. I would like to see a workshop. So in terms of what I have in my direction, like we talked about a workshop, I am anticipating a workshop specifically on this so that we can update and modernize those policies. I think that as some of these people have said, like the timing of mitigation, the mitigation ratios, I think times are different from 2010. And, you know, looking at our population figures, particularly in South County, have changed drastically over the last 10 to 20 years. Ag mitigation was a much different discussion at that point. So my 2 cents is before we move forward, I understand this is informational only, but I do think we need to have a really robust workshop and we need to come up with some policies and not kick it to January. I'm a little concerned that we're behind, you know, behind what everybody else is doing. If the cities are meeting regularly and the county is bringing it to the Planning Commission in November, I'm surprised we're waiting till January to address this. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you for those comments. I want to go back just to 2022 and December of 2022, and when this commission approved the ag mitigation plan that was part of the Miramonte project without discussion. I think that was an opportunity for all of us to really understand and better, you know, have the discussion. I'm glad that we're having the discussion now, but I think I would have appreciated a discussion beforehand, before it was approved. And now we have all of a whole year that we've been dealing with some of the issues and challenges. But with that said, I also want to make sure that we recommend after hearing from the different cities, especially the South County cities, Salinas Valley cities, and listening to our broad authority that we have as LAFCO and some of the recent challenges with annexations. And given that the Salinas Valley cities have proposed some of the largest annexations, and if I'm correct, I think Soledad, the approval that was given to Soledad last year was the first in the county in order of the, in regards to the annexation levels, we haven't had approved an annexation of that magnitude. But with that comes challenges, and I think we see that now. But in order for us to be able to continue with the discussion with the county and the cities and allow the county to move forward with what they're going to recommend, but also separate that, I agree that that has to be separate from the Salinas Valley cities and looking at the policies that would have more information once the Salinas Valley cities, you know, continue the discussions in regards to timing, exemptions, and the mitigation ratios. There's already some concrete information in terms of some of the challenges, but I think we need more comprehensive information to be able to consider and evaluate. I'd heard that word today, and I think it is our responsibility to really be able to talk about policy changes when we have comprehensive information that we can consider and evaluate. And for me, just in terms of some of the exemptions that we do need to consider now, given the fact that many of our cities are challenged with building housing and preserving ag land, and many of the cities are surrounded by ag land. So how do we best meet both both state mandates that we have to be able to do both for the best interests of our communities. And so my recommendation would be the same as Mayor Craig's, is that we come back, we allow for the cities to look at specific policies that do work. We bring back some of that information to consider and evaluate. And also for me is having a workshop. I think it's really imperative that we have a workshop and we really understand what are some of those challenges. We've heard over and over some of those existing challenges, but I think we really need to make sure that we really understand in terms of the timing exemptions and the development process. If we are challenged with developing housing that meets the needs of our community, how are we going to do that while we're still preserving ag mitigation? And what was said with the cities is this obviously is really critical. It's not challenging the fact that ag mitigation and ag mitigation plan has to be in place, but what is that ag mitigation policy looks like that it still conforms to the state mandates and still allows the cities to continue to build in a form that's adequate and affordable for its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Velasquez. Ian? Okay, anybody else from this side of the dais have a comment? Okay, we'll move it to our side here. Mary Ann.
I was very sad that this was not a workshop, because I do believe that we have been talking about it for months. And I'm a person that if we expect a city to work with a developer for years, but we don't give them the rules of what they need to do to make it happen, I am not sure that we'll ever get anything, because it's not very fair to the city. It's not very fair to the developer, not fair to the county. It's not fair to the districts that will be impacted. I believe that this body needs to stand up for what, in my opinion, we're elected for, and that is to set some guidelines. Reed, if I heard you correctly, you said we need to assess and analyze. Did I hear that?
I'm sure I said something along those lines. I wasn't quoting statutory language in there as much as trying to capture the spirit.
I came from 45 years of assessing and analyzing, so it's my life. And I also heard you say that we are not creating what it should be with a plot map and all of that. I don't think there's anybody up here that thinks that they're going to be saying where a school goes or a road goes. That is nothing I signed up for. It is to look at the overall needs of the county, of the state, and the needs of our communities on the overcrowded and unhoused people that we have within our borders. I sat in on a session last week where we heard there are 11,878 unhoused children in the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District. That's just in one school district. And how we, as community leaders, can wring our hands and cry in public over, oh my God, we need housing for these people, but not put a timeline on ourselves because, oh dear God, we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas. I believe it is our duty to address this and move forward on it, and I'm dedicated to it. I would cancel a vacation. I would do whatever it takes to get this moving forward. I look at those cities, they are paying those staff people to come here, to sit here, and we are giving them nothing. And I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of us. If I'm going to analyze and assess, I would like to see some other examples of what other communities have done to address this. I think that's important. We don't have to invent it. We can steal somebody's really good idea and put it forward. Working in 2010, in 2023, almost 2024, facts and how somebody made a determination is so crazy to me. That's like teaching kids in a 1950s education system model. That's not working for us either. So I mean, I really think if we're going to be the leaders that we think we are, this is the time that we take it on and that we work with everybody. I did not sign up for LAFCO to be a parrot for the county. I believe that LAFCO needs to stand on its own. It has its own Cortese Knox, which is a slightly different set of rules. I also look, if we think we're going to be the ones standing as the barrier to housing with all of these RENA numbers, I would think eventually the state would wake up and think that maybe we're part of the problem. So I believe there's a way to work to do timing and phasing on things, and it's messier. It's a lot harder to do. It's a lot more on staff, and it would have to be so that it's, I guess I'll say, bulletproof for future commissions, that they couldn't unwind it if that was the intent of what was happening. But there are so many ways to do this, and I just think if we just keep kicking it down the road, we are costing everyone so much money. We're costing our communities so much discontent. And if somebody doesn't give someone a roadmap, I don't believe we're going to see anything get done. So my opinion, we need a workshop. We need it in November, and we need to move on this. And I don't know, I haven't sat in on all those meetings, but I guess I might go to one and just hear what LAFCO is espousing if they attend these meetings when we haven't really set any policy ourselves.
Thank you, Marianne. We have anything, any other commissioner comments at this time?
I just want to say I don't have any objection to a workshop. I think it's a very good idea. We probably should do it next month. We don't have a meeting next month, so I'm all for that.
Thank you. Supervisor Askew.
Thank you. So I really appreciate the presentation from Reed, just sort of reviewing why our policies are, what they allow us to do, what they don't allow us to do, how the state sort of overlay fits into all of this. Thank you for that context. It's clear to me from all of our discussions that county policy nor city policy supersedes what LAFCO is required to do. In fact, the county could have a policy, the cities could each have a policy, and as far as I'm understanding, our responsibility as a LAFCO body would be to consider and evaluate those policies as part of any application approval that was before us. So I don't know that anyone, I for one, am not hearing anyone say that we should wait and see what city policies come up with or what the county policy is to determine what we do. I think it's more information that we have available to us when an application is in front of us. If I'm wrong on that point, please educate me. So just as a point of reference, I don't know that we need to be overly concerned about the timeline that the county's working on or the timelines the cities are working on for their ag mitigation policies, or even if they have them, until we have an application in front of us. We just spent last week hosting the Cal LAFCO conference, and I heard again and again and again from LAFCOs across our state that there is this importance of having a director of your local LAFCO who is in open and regular dialogue with any community that would be bringing a proposal forward, so that these sort of iterative conversations can happen, so that if there are particular limitations that a jurisdiction has that would prevent them from moving forward on something the community has prioritized, that the LAFCO is aware of those factors and that can be built into an application, that alternatives, whether it be for the when, the where, or the how of ag mitigation, that those options and proposals can be built around the unique circumstances of a jurisdiction. And I guess I'm hesitant to say that we should give up that authority and control that our LAFCO has. And also, I'm hearing and can very clearly understand that for the type of development that we're needing to have happen today to address our housing crisis, is different and requires our cities to have some guideposts to follow. The cities are looking for, just tell us what the rules are so that we can follow them, so that the developers can build a pro forma that bottom lines out. So I hear that desire too, and there is a tension between these realities of, hey, we're super flexible and we're going to work with you, versus here are the rules and they're black and white and there is no variation on those. And so I think asking the question about what other communities are doing, what other county LAFCOs are doing, how does our policies match up or divert from policies in other communities? I think that would be helpful to have. And then I think also just sort of a better understanding of, I think, how we work with our executive director on these issues. I will say, in the time that I've been on LAFCO, it's been very clear to me that there's a sense that that this board has sort of predetermined outcomes, or it appears to me that this board has given indications or direction to our executive director about how to proceed with applications prior to the opportunity to evaluate and consider those applications that come before us. I don't know that we've done ourselves any favors by providing that type of direction in advance of applications showing up for our evaluation and approval. And I think that our staff has done a phenomenal job of sort of standing firm and saying, what are the requirements of NOx, the Cortese-NOx Act? What are the requirements of LAFCO? And let's do the staff work so that we have the actual documentation in front of us. I think we would be well advised to, as a board, to really think about, what is our purpose? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? And how do our policies help us move in that direction? But do so in a way that really does honor the intent of why we're here. I'm not here to represent the county. I'm not here to represent the city that I live in. I'm here to represent LAFCO. So I support a workshop if that's the direction to move forward, but I do think there's a lot of unanswered questions that need to be answered before we could give any direction to change policy.
Anyone else from the dais? Supervisor Church?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to be real brief. A workshop is, I think, be helpful. I think we've heard that from everybody up here. The whole housing crisis, it goes way beyond us. I mean, all we're doing is just laying out the markers on a field. The cities, the counties, they're going to have to, do the basic things in here. And I haven't really said it to this body. I've said it elsewhere. I just think we've gone down a path on how we're doing housing for the last decades that is just wrong. Houses are too big. They're not affordable. That's part of the problem. And the state puts laws that don't help out. The county puts laws that don't help out. The cities put, laws that don't help out necessarily on this. It's something that really needs to be totally looked at. But, we have our own little portion in here. All we're doing is drawing the lines on the field. And, the more we can look at how we understand that, the better. So, a workshop would be helpful in that way. But, I think we just have to be able to retain a lot of flexibility, because the cities right now might be lined up, but they might have a different perspective in the future. The county might line up with them, they might not. I mean, everything looks a little bit differently. We have a great deal of flexibility, and I think that's an important thing to retain whereas we go forward. Ian, you get the last word.
I'm sure the chair will go last. I agree with everybody, what you guys said, particularly about the workshop, and particularly about everybody has their hand in the mix about why housing is so unaffordable. It's so unaffordable, like you guys know, because we're not building any. And I'm not saying that's our responsibility to build any here, but our responsibility is what our responsibility is, meaning flexibility. And I heard Reed when he said that, hey, our policy now is, hey, it reads as though it's very flexible. But in practice, I heard our executive director say a couple of times about how these requirements should be adhered to. Every time we talked about ag mitigation, we went back to how we've been doing it for the last 20 to 30 years. That's a standard. And I'm going to read when I'm talking about this, because someone said the commission's consistent practice concerning time and mitigation My understanding, consistent means a practice, a standard, no wiggle room, no flexibility. And so we're not even asking ourselves, can we be flexible in a time? Because when we talked about changing some of the time of mitigation, we say, we've been doing it this way for 30 years, let's keep doing it this way. Well, then there's no flexibility, right? So I'm agreeing with keep ourselves flexible, but at a certain point, we're here to balance ag mitigation. Ag mitigation is not the priority, it's the balance. And there's no way we get around of saying, well, you can't mitigate. No, I don't think the cities are saying that. They're saying, work with us to figure out a way. And I'm thinking to myself is, to be honest, what are we saying at the meetings with the county and the city's working group if we haven't established our policy? Now, we talked about the workshop, we talked about updating the policy, so all we could do is go by what we've been doing. But what have we been doing? If we're flexible, then we should be telling the cities, well, it could be 1 for 1. It could be 2 for 1. We don't know what what the commission is going to do. Or it could be some in lieu fees. But what we should be doing is saying what it will be. And if we're saying you're not in agreement with what the county is doing for 2 for 1, is that our policy? I don't know, because I haven't heard you guys espouse it yet. And so I think we need a workshop. I think we need to decide, the majority needs to decide which direction they want to give as a commission and allow the executive director to implement those things. But at a certain point, we have to make a decision on what those policies are. And I think we've been talking about this for a handful of months. Last time we talked about it, the cities were saying, well, why don't we work with the county? Now all of a sudden, they're not on the county's board. They're not on the train with the county, and that's fine. That's them. But towards the end, the executive director did say we should wait for the county to complete their work. And so I'm not sure that makes sense. I'm not against that. I'm just saying we should make our own independent decisions. And when do we make them? And so if we don't do a workshop now, when do we make them? And maybe that information will, of course, that information will help us to inform, but it's all about flexibility. So what difference does it make what the county say with respect to the county, right? What difference does it make what the cities say? They tell us what they want. But if we're going to remain flexible, that means some projects are going to be 1 for 1, some projects 2 for 1, some projects some money. We don't know that until the application comes through here, because we can't establish a 1 for 1, a 2 for 1. So what are we waiting on, right? And that's why I was going to ask Rita. We could virtually keep the same policy we have now, because he says it's been working. He says this is wide and as general as it probably could be. It hasn't caused us problems yet. But and this is my last point, what I'm getting to is every time an application comes here, we judge it by what we've been doing for the last 20 years. That establishes a standard, that establishes a formula, that establishes a consistent criteria, which we're not supposed to have. And so thank you, Chair.
Appreciate your words, Ian. Okay, anybody else? Mayor Velasquez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just have a clarification, and thank you, Commissioner Oglesby, just in terms of the flexibility, because I know we did hear that in terms of the current policies that provide flexibility. I just have a question, because we're talking about applications, and we need to be able to look at that when the application comes. And we're looking at this at the regional level, but we do have an application that's existing in place, and it does happen to be with the city of Soledad. So that was already approved. So the ag mitigation was already approved, and I'm a little confused that we need to separate, if we're looking at a workshop to move forward with what future policy looks like, whether it be changed or not. And reviewing applications on a case-by-case basis coming in is what has been the practice for the last several years. I'm just having a hard time kind of trying to understand where the city sits because application has already been approved. The ag mitigation portion of it or the ag mitigation requirement, this commission approved back in December of 2022. So it just seems like we're now talking about two different things, and I want to make sure the city has that flexibility to work with staff to be able to figure out how we move forward. If the current policies are flexible, then how do they move forward with that? Anything else coming before this board or this commission, then whatever policies are implemented or not, then it would be subject to that. Can you clarify that for me? Because I think there's two different things that are going on.
Let me jump on that, Reed, if you don't mind. I would suggest if we did come up with a new policy, that the city could resubmit their application. Do they want the risk? I don't know what Reed's thoughts are there.
If there's already been a decision and an approval made by the commission, then that applicant would proceed forward with those standards that are in place, right? If we change policy or we change standards in any venue, it is from that day forward, those people are subjected to the new standards. So does that answer your question in terms of when that prior decision was made? That is sort of, that horse has left the barn.
They fall under the existing policies that are flexible.
Exactly, but I don't have the approvals in front of me because I don't know exactly what the language was regarding ag mitigation off the top of my head. But whatever that stated, which came out of our old policy, that's the governing document.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I can clarify that a little bit. One of the attachments to today's staff report, which is agenda item number 7, is a set of slides that were presented in June 26. And slide number 8 on page 4 of those slides does provide verbatim the condition of approval approved by this commission regarding ag mitigation for the city of Soledad's Miramonte project. And it does provide that the mitigation shall consist of agricultural conservation easements and numerous other things, in that the ag mitigation easements and or in lieu fee payments shall be executed prior to recordation of their certificate of completion. So the commission did set a process and established a time frame for the Miramonte annexation. Yes, page 4. Yes.
Okay, do we have any other commissioners wanting to make a comment at this time?
You're looking at me like.
I have one more thing, and I think if we look at the very last page in section 6, and we see how little amount of annexations or any land changes, borders have been approved since 2000, maybe that's our benchmark, that we really do need to look at how we're doing business with the requirements of our communities in today's world. So I think when I look at that and I know how much acreage there is total, and I see how little has actually made any change, I'm like, that's interesting to me. So I think that's kind of a good visual for all of us.
Been a few swings in the economy in that same timeline. I'd like to move forward with the thought 23 years ago, that maybe 25 years ago, the Fano Ranch, which is now, it's called by something else, but Glenn Pace, I was actually in a meeting with him I think it's been 25 years ago. And we talked about 1-to-1 to 2-to-1 ag land mitigation. The same thing with Nataraga and that property. That was talked about over 20 years ago, 1-to-1, 2-to-1. And they could have both moved forward at that time with that ag land mitigation and put that applications before LAFCO at that time too. They would have saved a considerable amount of money, but it was no surprise the last 20 years as the cities are looking at these annexations. Those numbers have been out there for that long. I don't know where the hesitation comes from. We need housing in this valley. We need to make it happen now. There's no doubt about it. Do we put can everybody open up their calendars and take a look and see if November 20 or November 27 looks okay to everybody, so we can get this workshop, so we can get some decisions, maybe clarify our policies a little bit better. I heard Ian say it. Maybe we keep this existing policy because it adds flexibility to it. The annexations and ag land mitigation all comes before this board. So it depends on who's sitting on this dais as to what that ag land mitigation is going to be. If we exclude schools or roads from the mitigation or affordable housing from the mitigation, there's all kinds of policy decisions to be made, and I'd rather leave it open. If it's superior prime ag land in the cities, and we've got a crop of romaine on that ag land, and it's not grazing land, I think that should be closer to a 1.5. But if it's strictly grazing, maybe it's a half an acre to an acre. So, it leaves that door open for this commission to make those decisions. And everybody knows what the policy's been, because the policy's been in effect for over 10 years. So when the cities go to make their application, I don't know where the surprise is coming from the city or the county. It's there. That's been our policy. Read the policy. Put your application into LAFCO. And anything that's been out in the press, that's the press. Sure, that's what they say. They might have been quoting verbatim, but it's the way the press swings the comments in the paper. But I just think we need to get the workshop. We need to get past this issue. It's been hanging on forever, and we need to move on as a commission. So I'm going to throw the date of November 20 out there. Does anybody have November 20? And if we start at our normal time at 3 p.m. and maybe just go 3 to 5, go for a 2-hour workshop, and maybe we have some capability to make it an action item. Supervisor Church.
I'm unavailable November 20.
Okay, November 27?
3 o'clock, you say?
Yes.
I would be available for a couple hours.
Okay. The dais, the November 27,
I'm going to
anybody?
do a show of hands on the 20th and the 27th and just,
Go with what's better. Okay, November 20. November 20.
November 20?
Okay, November 27th? There's our winner. And staff? You're available. Okay. So I think, do we have a motion to move forward a
I
workshop on
moved
our
that we
calendar?
set a workshop for the 27th of November, 3 o'clock.
Committee member, would you accept a friendly amendment if I second it to include developers, input, cities, county, and ag commissioner's office? I would just want to make sure that we're really taking a robust look at all different angles as we move forward with potential new policy.
Absolutely. And
Thank you, I'll second.
Oglesby.
How can we motion that developers and cities and everybody else, we're doing a workshop. They're free to be here and they're free to chime in but I don't understand the motion including them. That's what I don't understand.
Reed, do you have a comment? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If I may, through the chair, respond. I just want to make sure that it's not just a staff presentation by LAFCO. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's giving a presentation, but I would like to hear from the different different parties that are involved in this. Thank you.
And my comment, Commissioner Oglesby, would be that I think the way that I would interpret that, and Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, is that to request that staff reach out to stakeholders to seek their participation. Obviously, we can't force people, but we can ask. Is that about right?
Yes.
Just, all right, one more question. I am looking for some information myself, which is how many acres of farmland is in the Monterey County? I'd like for us to know that when we come back and then, well, it doesn't need to be now. And then how many acres make up the Salinas Valley cities? And we don't need that now.
I actually had that verbatim.
Oh, did you?
At the Cal LAFCO introduction. So if I could look at my speech, I would, but Reed, did you find something?
No, I don't have that number.
Okay, great. We'll get those facts to you.
It says 1,300,000.
Irrigated ag acres.
Land in farm.
Let's just clarify that it's not.
Yeah, I don't want
I'm
Wikipedia.
getting a lower number than that.
Yeah.
I think that might be more the little county. I see some article here from the Herald on March 25th, 2023, referring to 366,000 acres of productive farmland. But, depends what you measure, grazing land or what you're doing.
Sure.
It's on to here. I just wanted to add in that if we're going to bring in different stakeholders, we throw as broad of a net as possible, not just the ones that were mentioned right here.
Sure, and I think if we notice this publicly and ask for written comments up front, so we're not in a barrage of 5 hours of meeting listening to public testimony.
And how long are we talking about this workshop lasting?
We said 2 hours.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
But it's open if anybody has any comments. I would just like to get on to an action at that
Matt,
point.
I do have a comment on that. I think this is one of the most important things that LAFCO, that this commission will do, which is to evaluate and analyze this and come up with some clear guidelines for our communities. So to put a 2-hour time limit on it, really?
Let's not have a timeline.
I think we need to allow people to speak and we need to listen. And our staff needs to bring back the information that we believe is pertinent to our decisions. And I don't know, I think it's, I think we're cheating ourselves and everyone else and the staff if we just say we're going to do 2 hours and that's it. Nobody else gets to talk. We're done. We're going to make a decision.
Fine. Let's leave it open.
Mr. Chair, if I just add in there, and I totally agree with Commissioner Leffel, but Mayor Craig and I would probably only be able to stay till around 5:30 because we have a Monterey 1 meeting, I believe, that day as well.
Can we start earlier?
Especially since we're going to have city staff, county staff in the room, might oblige them. We could start at noon as far as that goes.
I'm sorry, so what is it? Is it a workshop or is it a public hearing or what? Define what this is going to be, because I think for some of us, I'm sorry, but I don't have the luxury to be here for 4 or 5 hours. I know that we've discussed it many times, and if we're going to get feedback in advance, I think it's important to be able to define what is this? Because a workshop, for me, it's a workshop for us to be able to look at information, consider, and obviously we want the input, but that's, if we're looking at inviting a lot more individuals, then it's not a workshop. So I think for me, it's just define what we want.
If we want to have a decision and we want to move this forward, would we consider it being a public hearing at that point?
Let me
Sure.
Well, that's a good question, because if it's not, then when are we coming back to make the decision?
That's why I want to bring this to a head. So I really want to make a decision.
I'm not forcing the issue. I'm just agreeing with you by, if it's just a workshop, then we're not making the final decision, then we have to schedule it. So, but we didn't talk about that when we said, let's do a workshop. But I'm able to make a decision at any time. And I do agree that, people can write in, but do we need 60 people with public comment? I mean, come on now, we should be knowing what we're doing, not prejudging it, but we know the issues. I've been thinking about these issues for the last year. And so it may be some new stuff out there, so maybe they want to write some written materials. And of course, if we're a public meeting, it'll be public comments, but I'm agreeing with Mayor Velazquez. We said it was a workshop. And then I'm not saying don't invite everybody, but if it's a workshop, then it's a little difference between the two. And now if we want to make a decision, then it has to be written an agenda that's possible decision. So I'm with the majority. I'm just stating those things.
Well, in any event, there's going to be a Brown Act meeting on that date, which makes it really easy because it covers all of this stuff, right? We'll have to put it on an agenda, it will be noticed, and there will be public comment, which allows individuals to participate in and speak to that particular topic. If we do it as a special meeting, right, we can constrain it to not all the topics under the sun, but just to the agendized topic. The issue of is it a workshop or not is really a decision for the commission to decide today. Do you want it to be a process that's more focused on soliciting community feedback from other stakeholders and having that person speaking to the board and to you so that you can consider that? Or is it to allow everybody to submit written comments, go through public comment, close public comment, and bring it back to this commission for a 2.5 hour or 3 hour, and maybe you continue the meeting, right, if you don't reach a firm consensus, and then actually going back and forth. So a workshop to me maybe means something different. A workshop to me means the commissioners up here having already heard all of this, going back and forth, live time with staff to carve out language maybe, right? Pushing through those details that are the sticky wickets. So it's really about in the eye of the beholder. Is a workshop solely the commissioners hammering it out? Some people think so, but workshops also sometimes have the first half of the day as public comment and the second half is the workshop. But time is money and we all have things to do. So it's up to the commission to decide. You could say, we're going to reach out to everybody, solicit feedback, ask for written comments, and hope that the folks are able to read between the lines and not coming and turning it into a 2.5 hour public comment spectacle, because that would be counterproductive for what you're trying to accomplish. But I don't know what their level of involvement and interest would be, and they always have a right, whether it's a workshop or a special meeting or a regular meeting, to show up here and take their 3 minutes. So if the commission wants to reach out for public comment, I think you can give direction like we've done today, ask for stakeholder input, set a workshop to set a policy. But it's going to be difficult to make a decision, I think, unless you do it with a lot of substantive time with all of you, maybe having done some pre-drafting in your heads, right? And coming with something that you can feel you could jump off with. A lot of people think, well, we've got a lot of great feedback, so we'll continue it for maybe 3 or 4 days to get the final product and then come back to have a discussion to adopt it at that point. But these are the back and forth that I'll leave to your discretion.
What's the pleasure of the dais?
Mr. Chair, so if we had a workshop, took public comment, asked our staff to bring back more information that we could analyze, and then set it for our December 4th to make the decision, which that would be still fresh in everybody's minds, because November 27th to the 4th is
a week.
And so it would give us the opportunity then to think it through in our minds and come up with an idea of what we need to individually come up with, and then put the vote out on the 4th.
Kate?
Yes, in looking at the calendar, we are about ready to issue our meeting packet for December, for that December meeting on the 27th. So that does not allow time to take in the information from the workshop and really deal with it, because our packet distribution process begins then.
It's a month? It's 5 weeks to get it?
November 27th for the workshop to,
That's only 4 working days.
yeah. Right. And the point is our meeting packet goes out on this week, or last week it went out a week early. So the latest the packet would go out is on the 29th. So, and the 28th is our day to really just to complete the distribution process, prepare to post our meeting packet.
Through the chair, that makes sense, right? That makes sense. So do we have another special meeting? I mean, we can't force it into our regular meeting, so let's just keep moving forward like you want to do. So now, do we have another meeting? I mean, that's just where we're at, right? Let's not try to force it into the regular meeting because she said it's too difficult.
Right, and we can make that decision at November 27th meeting.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Perfect.
So
I would just, okay, I was going to say this before. I'm not one of those that try to put a time limit on the meeting, but if we're going to have that special meeting or if it's going to be a regular meeting anyway, the conversation continues. So I would be comfortable shutting it down at a certain point because I don't want to lose our 2 commissioners that will have to leave. And so, that's just what we have to do is work through this so we all can move together. And I wouldn't want them to have to leave after 2 hours. And we probably won't make a decision that night anyway. We're just really giving staff direction. And
on bringing something back to
yeah, anyway.
Mary Ann, could you formulate a motion, please?
Could we start at 2 so that we have a 3-hour workshop potential? We may not even need it, but at least give us that amount of time.
Is that a motion?
I'm asking everybody before I make the motion.
We're clarifying the motion just because of our calendars.
Okay, so she's clarifying then.
I'm clarifying.
So she's asking for input.
That's clarification.
Yeah.
What, through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Another show of hands.
2.
Two it is.
Thank you.
Okay, so my motion is that we have a full workshop on November 27th from 2 until 5 to discuss the agricultural mitigation and overall policies of LAFCO, Monterey County.
Or second? Yep. The second agrees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, being none, motion carries. Thank you. A first and a second. You have that? Great.
Sir.
I'll bring the wine. Okay. Under new business, consideration of the 2023 Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence Study for 5 Greenfield area public agencies. Receive a report from our executive officer.
Thank you, Chair Gorley, members of the commission. This is agenda item number 7 in your packet, and you've also received a supplement on late Friday afternoon and more today. Our senior analyst, Jonathan Brinkman, will provide the report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair Gorley and commissioners. I'll get to this memorandum, supplemental memorandum number 2 later in this presentation. First, just want to start off and say that consistent with the LAFCO work program, staff has prepared this 2023 Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence Study for the 5 Greenfield area public agencies. This includes the City of Greenfield, the Greenfield Fire Protection District, the Greenfield Memorial District, Public Recreation District, and Cemetery District. The study was prepared to meet the LAFCO state mandate to prepare periodic reviews of cities and special districts, municipal services, and sphere of influences. And another purpose of the study was to also support the Greenfield community by providing in-depth review and recommendations for the Greenfield area special districts that are facing multiple issues and challenges. During the preparation of this study, LAFCO staff identified that there were a number of critical deficiencies in the Greenfield Recreation, Memorial, and Cemetery districts, specifically with their administrative functions, compliance with state legal requirements, and implementation of best practices. So for some examples here, the 3 districts have not adopted current annual budgets and have not adopted audits for the previous 6 to 10 years. So as a result, the study recommended some corrective actions and some timelines to address these 3 districts' issues of noncompliance. And then in those corrective actions, we broke it into into 3 tiers. The first tier being to correct the adoption of budgets and completion of audits as a first tier priority. And then the second tier would be for these districts to complete their Form 700 statements of economic interest and their required trainings for ethics and for adherence to harassment prevention training. And then to implement as a measure that for the audits was also a performance audit. So recommendations from the performance audit that would be forthcoming from these districts that looks at their financial management policies and practices and recommends improvements for the districts. And then as a final part of a corrective action was to partner with the city of Greenfield on a feasibility study that would look at integrating the city and the districts and providing services for the districts. So for that final recommendation for corrective action, we looked at the city of Greenfield and the Greenfield Fire Protection District as a successful model that integrated the city and the fire district to provide services. So back in 2018, LAFCO, after LAFCO action, since then the city has owned the fire station, the associated equipment, and had the firefighters to provide all the fire services for the city and for the rural district. And so the district continues to exist primarily for revenue collecting powers and transfers its funds to the city, and the city provides the actual services to within the city and within the surrounding district. And so just wanted to go over summarize those recommendations for the commission. And then want to also bring up that we've received correspondence since publishing of our packet. And of course, this correspondence has been from the Community Water Center, a nonprofit that is focused on providing or increasing access of safe and clean drinking water to communities. And so in their letter, so they provided a letter last Friday, October 20th, and a second letter today. Their letter on Friday requested that LAFCO include an area that is partially within the city of Greenfield's sphere of influence and partially outside the sphere of influence, and include that in the city's sphere of influence. So to expand the sphere of influence to include these areas. And they also recommended that the determinations of this study identify this as a disadvantaged unincorporated community. So I'll go over those recommended. As a result of this, staff is not currently recommending an expansion of the sphere of influence for the city of Greenfield. When we met previously in August with the city of Greenfield and the Community Water Center, We discussed these areas outside the city. The Community Water Center did not specifically identify these areas as a disadvantaged or unincorporated community at the time, but we discussed options to provide services to these areas. So we're not recommending that as part of the study that we expand the City of Greenfield's sphere of influence for these areas, but instead to make some adjustments to our determination section of this MSR. So I'll go over those on the screen with you. So as part of our determinations, we're required to make 7 required municipal service review determinations. And what we're requesting today is to make adjustments to determinations number 2 and number 3. Number 2 is to identify the location and characteristics of any disadvantaged unincorporated communities within or contiguous to the sphere of influence. So Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act has these determinations as necessary determinations LAFCO has to make in its municipal service review. And in this one, we are proposing adjustments here to identify this area. There is a large census block around outside of this city of Greenfield. And within that, there are clusters of unincorporated residential parcels. And so there are 3 areas that were specifically brought up by the committee for the Center for the Community Water Center. Sorry, excuse me. And of these 3 areas, one is located on the south side of Walnut Avenue, another near the corner of 12th Street and Pine Avenue, and another on the south side of Apple Avenue between 13th and 14th Streets, also known as Mercado Camp. So in determination number 2, we would identify those locations and describe them and note that it's possible that these are disadvantaged unincorporated communities by that definition. And then under determination number 3, so under this, it includes looking at the present and planned capacity of public facilities and adequacy of public services and infrastructure needs and deficiencies, including disadvantaged urban unincorporated communities. And so we've added information here in this determination, an additional paragraph that refers to determination number 2, the location of this area, and describes that the city, which has a population of about 19,000, already plans for present and future capacity needs. And this is specifically looking at wastewater, municipal water, and fire protection. And that there is an option for the city to request a LAFCO out-of-agency service extension for the city to provide water service or sewer service to these areas. And we've noted that the fire protection is already covered through the Greenfield Fire Protection District. The city fire station provides that service to this area. And then finally, the last change, proposed change, is to sphere of influence determinations. So LAFCO is required to make 5 of these. And under section 4, we just refer them to the description of the area under municipal service review determination number 2, and then under number 5 to add to the discussion here, similar to determination number 3 under the municipal service review, that the city can provide in the future, can submit an application to LAFCO, and the water issues that are been identified for these areas that are known to be present, the city could submit the application to extend its potable water service to these areas. So, I just wanted to cover those recommended adjustments to our determinations for the study, and to ask for any commission questions that staff can answer at this point and proceed with recommendations.
Any commissioner questions at this point? We'll just open for public comment. Anybody from the public this afternoon? Yes, ma'am, or you can come up to the dais. And do we have anybody on Zoom raising their hands also?
There's one.
One, we have one hand on Zoom also, okay. We'll open this up for three minutes of comment.
Hello, members of LAFCO. My name is Saul Cardona. I own a property at 40052 Walnut Avenue in Greenfield, 93927, just outside the city of Greenfield. Our well water system has been dealing with nitrates, contaminated levels, almost 4 times the maximum contaminant level at 38 milligrams, and also 123 TCP contamination over the max contaminated level of at 0.11 micrograms. Other challenges we have, and we are working to find a long-term solution to this problem. I am commenting today because the MSR should not be approved at this point, because myself and my fellow neighbors along areas such as Walnut Avenue and 12th and Pine are not included in the sphere of influence. Excuse me. Where we do not, they say we do not exist, and we do exist. That's why I'm here for, to talk about the issues. So we would want to be included, and we would like you to revise the draft at this time. I also was a member of the Fire Department Board of Directors for about 16 years in Greenfield, so I'm aware of your LAFCO, and hopefully you can take time and analyze and see, like you all mentioned, that when they draw the lines, we would like to be included in those lines, because that water that we're using to shower, if we're supposed to shower and you turn the water on, that vapor of the hot water causes cancer. So honestly, it's not a privilege for me to shower. So thank you, and
thank you for your testimony, and appreciate your service with City of Greenfield Fire.
I thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Haley Shingler from the Community Water Center, and just off of what he said, in one of our comment letters includes some of the major health problems that come with the contaminants that Saul just mentioned, and those might be worth reading over. They're no joke. So good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Haley Shingler from the Community Water Center. Community Water Center, like Jonathan mentioned, is an organization that works to achieve the human right to water in California. We are here alongside residents from the Walnut and Pine community, and we thank you for your response to our comments on Friday and for the inclusion of this community as a named DUC. However, the requisite analysis must still be performed. The Walnut Avenue and 12th and Pine area is an inhabited DUC for the purposes of SB 244 analysis. Overall, the full area in question has at least 50 households and as such is inhabited. Under SB 244, LAFCOs must adopt determinations for an update of an SOI and a city or special district that provides public facilities and services, i.e. present and probable need for those facilities and services in identified DUCs. LAFCOs must, in writing, identify location and characteristics of DUCs within or contiguous to existing SOIs of cities and special districts as part of LAFCO's MSR determinations. These determinations must also include written determinations on infrastructure needs or deficiencies related to public facilities and services in these DUCs. At this time, all parties during various meetings have agreed that we are yet unclear if an extraterritorial service agreement is the best way to move forward for these residences. But during this critical juncture in the long-term project to access safe drinking water for these families, our intention in encouraging the required DUC analysis by LAFCO is to capture as many potential avenues as possible for access to safe and democratic drinking water in advance of the completion of an alternatives analysis. We ask that you conduct this needed analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public?
Good afternoon, LAFCO. I was asked to speak for a community member that couldn't make it today. So I'll be reading their public comment on their behalf. So this is for Tony Amezcua and Lydia Amezcua, who have spent decades living in Greenfield, more specifically in 40924 12th Street. So we did a analysis on their well water, and it came out to 27 milligrams per liter of nitrates, which at that point we couldn't recommend a state certified filter for them. They also had TCP at 0.075 micrograms per liter, which, if you know, is 15 times over the maximum contaminant level. And that was the first time they realized they couldn't shower with their water, like Saul said, because if through the steam, the TCP can get into somebody's system if it's inhaled. So as you know, that was a huge shock. They've been dealing with water issues the whole time they've been there. They've had years of drought where they weren't able to get any water from their well, and they've had to incur an incredible amount of expense to even maintain their well. So Tony and Lydia want everybody here to know that they do exist, that they want some long-term solutions for their water issues, and that in any consideration in the future, that you know that them and other neighbors want to see, want to make sure that they're able to open their tap and drink the water. They believe that having clean water to drink isn't a privilege, it's a human right. I know for us and me, myself, who's always lived in the city, it's really easy to just trust the water that comes out of the tap, maybe use a Brita filter, but for them, they don't have that luxury. So on behalf of them, they ask that you do the studies that you need to and make sure you're including them in the sphere of influence so that they have a possibility to get clean water for themselves in the future and all of their neighbors. So,
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We have one on Zoom with their hand raised still.
Yes, thank you.
Name and address for the record, please. Sure.
Yeah, my name is Janaki Anaga. I'm at 461 34th Street in Sacramento. And may I proceed with my comment?
Yes, welcome to LAFCO.
Thank you. And good afternoon, commissioners. Thanks for hearing us from Community Water Center. I'm the Director of Community Advocacy there, and I can't be there with my team this afternoon, so I'm calling in. We received, of course, the memo provided by LAFCO on Friday evening, and we were glad to see the inclusion of the Walnut and Pine community as a named disadvantaged community. But I was the one who submitted some additional comments today via email and wanted to verbalize some of those comments here today in hopes that there's some conversation today or in a subsequent meeting to address some of these things that have been outlined today. So in my comments, I shared that under SB 244, LAFCO, having identified this disadvantaged community based on some of the facts we've presented, it does bear responsibility to conduct an assessment around necessary infrastructure needs for those areas that have been identified as a part of your municipal service review, considering infrastructure needs or deficiencies related to sewer, municipal, and industrial water and structural fire protection for any identified disadvantaged community. And from the communication we got from you all, and also, of course, Mr. Brinkman shared that we've talked, we've had a meeting. We understand that you all are encouraging of an extraterritorial service arrangement, or I'm not sure quite the vernacular you use, but an extraterritorial service agreement with City of Greenfield, but City of Greenfield would apply for to ensure that service is extended to this area. At this time, we're a technical assistance provider to the State Water Board. We're not entirely sure that that is going to be the route to that's going to be the most sustainable way forward for these people. And we realize we're kind of asking for a little bit of forecasting here with some major gaps in our factual analysis, but unfortunately your MSR process is only once every 5 years. So we're asking for some flexibility and consideration around this today to conduct that analysis, since there's no cavalry coming for these communities, these residences right outside and right within the sphere of influence, without having LAFCO identify and analyze those municipal service needs of those disadvantaged communities. And we're encouraging of anything within the suite of potential solutions that will bring clean water to these folks, but we want to ensure that that door is left open. So really appreciate you in the spirit of collaboration, looking at this again and making the necessary choice to ensure that the door is left open, that they're not left out if you determine that keeping them out of the sphere of influence will allow for, the expansion of services across the suite of potential options, then we would like to, meet with you to discuss the reasoning behind that. We'd like to just meet with you regardless, to ensure that we're on the same page about your decisions here.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
Chair, no hands are raised.
Okay, well, go ahead. Oh, yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Raul Rodriguez, and I serve on both the Greenfield Cemetery District as well as on the Greenfield Recreation District. In the Greenfield Recreation District, we manage Oak Park, which is a couple of miles outside of Greenfield. Perhaps you've never been there. I encourage you to visit. It's a beautiful park. And we also manage a building in town, which we call the Lions Club, which is a building that's used for the meetings for the Lions Club. Cemetery, we have two cemeteries, one right next to Oak Park, which is outside the city limits, and one in town. I'm here just to thank you on behalf of both districts for the municipal service review. We are very happy that this is now in writing, because we acknowledge all the issues we have, especially the one about the audits and about the missing information, or perhaps all the things that we're not doing. And we are already planning on fixing those. And I've been on the district board for maybe 8 years now, and I will say that it's a challenge. And if you want to manage the district properly, you need some training, and you need to understand that it's serious business. And perhaps sometimes when we serve on these boards, we don't realize it until we get a review. I'm happy the LAFCO offers training. And again, thank you for the review, and we know what we have to do, and those two districts, and we're working on it, and we look forward to fixing those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move it back to the dais at this time. Can we start off? Anybody want to start off?
I'll go ahead and start off. I want to thank Mr. Rodriguez for coming out here today and representing the Parks District and the Cemetery District. And we're working, like he said, we're all working together to try to comply to the LAFCO report.
Commissioner Askew.
Thank you. So just, I guess, if staff could respond to the public comment that we received, and it sounds like we did address the first question that I clearly understood about the disadvantaged unincorporated communities through the language change that's listed here. I think we addressed that. The second issue, item number 5, determination number 5, the public comment that we received, I think I heard there was a ask for some additional language under determination 5, but if you could just clarify the communication that's occurred back and forth between the community water center.
Jonathan?
Yes. So to describe the updates, so from the determination since Friday's version, we've added some changes to municipal service review determination number 3. So previously, that section was not updated in the memo that was presented on Friday. So in response to today's comment, we've updated number 3 here, and that's regarding the comment on present and planned capacity of public facilities, adequacy of public services and infrastructure needs and deficiencies, and how that relates to the needs of the disadvantaged unincorporated communities. So in this section of the added paragraph is shown here on the screen. If you could show it on the screen, please. That the paragraph added says, as discussed in the determination number 2, so identifying the location that was identified in number 2. We've said that there are clusters of unincorporated residential parcels both within and adjacent to the city's existing designated sphere, discussing where those locations are outside the city, and then noting that the city is continuing to grow. The city it maintains its municipal services and plans for future growth and capacity of these 3 particular services that are identified here: the wastewater, the municipal water, and the fire protection. And so we're noting here that the fire services are already provided through the city's provision of fire to the Greenfield Fire Protection District. We're noting here that the city does not currently provide water or wastewater to these areas that are outside the city limits. We're noting here the deficiencies here, since there are private wells on these properties. They're known to have had issues with water quality and contamination for a number of years. We're also noting in this paragraph that the city of Greenfield has an option to extend potable water services to these areas, either within its sphere of influence or outside its sphere of influence. And to do it outside the sphere of influence, they would need a letter from the county health department that documents the existing or pending threat of public health to the area, and that would allow them to provide that extraterritorial service. We also note here that on capacity, we would look at that as part of the city's application if the city submits one in the future for this outside of area service extension. We're also noting here that LAFCO has approved service extensions out of agency service extensions in the past for the city of Greenfield. And most recently, this happened in 2019. So these aren't cheap, so they're expensive to provide services outside the city. And so we've noted here that there's significant expense involved, and it would most likely need to be funded by either the property owners, grants, or some other combination of funding sources. So we feel as staff that we've addressed the current circumstances to these parcels, and that is also summarized in finding number 5 as well under sphere of influence study.
Okay, so just to clarify, so LAFCO staff, so there were some comments made asking for additional language, but we feel like LAFCO staff feels that we've provided as much language as we can as of right now as part of determination number 3. Is there additional language? If we were to do more, what would that look like to meet the request that was made by public comment?
To do more, I
guess can you clarify what was being asked for us by public comment? That there was a request to leave this open to be able to have additional study done to provide clarity, additional clarity.
So I don't want to speak for a public speaker here, but my sense is that they wanted additional options to explore additional options for providing service to these areas. Annexation is an option, sphere of influence amendment expanding the city's sphere of influence is another option. I think our concern today is that CEQA has not been done to do either of those steps. And there's the city-county MOU, which has determined that the city's agricultural edge and current sphere of influence that was approved in 2013. So that does take time as well to consult with the county to conduct CEQA. And from staff's perspective, based on the information we know today, this describes the situation, and an out-of-agency service extension is a tool that's ready and available currently versus those steps that take additional time in CEQA review.
Okay, thank you.
So staying in our lane, our LAFCO lane, we're doing everything that we feel possible to get clean water to these residents.
Yes, that's my sense, Chair.
Mayor Velasquez.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. My question is, I know that it seems from the information that they've been addressing this issue for quite some time now. Based on, Jonathan, some of those different, either the annexation or the expanding the sphere of influence, that's all between the city and county, correct? I guess I'm trying to understand, within our jurisdiction.
Yes, well, typically we'll receive an application for an annexation or a sphere of influence amendment, or sometimes both together. And that's currently hasn't been submitted in this case.
Okay, and then my last question, only because I know obviously there's individuals with unsafe drinking water. And I know in the state of California, we have over 1 million people, and to see we have some of those individuals here in Greenfield, is that considered, isn't that urgent? I don't want my family to be dealing with 15 times over the max contaminated levels of TCP. What is the urgency of that specific item to be able to move it forward? I know we probably don't have the authority, but what can we do as part of this coming before us?
I think I could maybe help a little bit on that. As your LAFCO staff, we have been engaged with the Community Water Center team in understanding the problems, severe problems, and we have engaged with the City of Greenfield, city manager, community development director, and brought the Community Water Center folks together with the city and our LAFCO staff to have a discussion. So as to what we can do at LAFCO, we are available anytime to receive a request from the city to extend water and sewer service. And that's something that can be easily and quickly managed and approved by LAFCO. But as Jonathan mentioned, and our findings and determinations make clear, that's an expensive project. It needs funding, and that funding isn't quite available yet, although the Community Water Center does, they do a wonderful job in identifying some of the funding solutions. As to a longer-term solution to amend the sphere of influence or to annex these properties into the city, yes, it does take coordination with the county. It takes cooperation of the city. And as of this date, the city has not expressed an interest in doing that. We have broached that subject with them, but they're not prepared to further analyze that, to work with the county, and to do the CEQA review and come up with the funding. So that's a harder issue, or as hard as at this point as extending water and sewer service. And funding is a big part of that. the challenge. But what I guess where I'd like to conclude is that I do think there's a role for LAFCO in identifying this issue in the municipal service review, the information that we've received from the Community Water Center and from the residents. That's very helpful to us. And what we want to continue to do and can commit to is to continue to, in a facilitating role, to bring the Community Water Center, the residents, the county, and the city together to look for solutions. And then we are prepared to act.
Commissioner Leifel?
So should this have been picked up in our review? Or are they outside of Greenfield, so they weren't any way that you would know this? I mean, how did we not know it? Did somebody know it? Should we have known it?
So I can help address that. So we're talking about 3 separate areas outside of the city limits. A couple of these areas are partially in the sphere of influence and partially outside, interspersed with agricultural land. So if you drew a circle around all these areas, you'd be probably looking at several hundred acres to connect them all, since they're in different locations. So previously, it wasn't, staff didn't, draw visually in our minds a circle around these areas. And there's a couple of different definitions of what it means to be inhabited to meet the definition of a disadvantaged, unincorporated community. So in LAFCO's CKH Act, it's whether there are 12 or more registered voters in an area. And the underlying water code that's referenced, it's about the number of residents in the area. So when we received the comment, we did our best to address it with the determinations amending these sections.
Okay, I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm just trying to understand, should they have been included in the original study of these municipal service reviews? That's all I'm asking.
During the time that we were preparing this study, we did have these conversations with the Water Center team and with the City of Greenfield. And as part of those discussions, the City of Greenfield determined that they were not ready to proceed with any of those tools that are available to LAFCO. And in terms of the disadvantaged community aspect of it, some of these properties are separated, and only if we look at them in an entirety would they be considered a disadvantaged community. So it is worthy of study, but it's definitely for the future.
So Kate, could it have, because they're not mentioned in the original study, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so, but you say that when you talked to the city and you talked to the CWC, you were aware of them, but you found it was not important enough to put it into the MSR. I guess I'm just saying, if we have residents who do not have water, which to me is a basic right, that it seems it could have at least been a footnote that we've uncovered this issue, because otherwise, if they didn't come forward, we wouldn't even know it. And so, I don't know, I guess I have to say, I think it's not complete, or it's flawed in that it's not mentioned at all. If that discussion was, I don't know.
If I may, Commissioner, it was mentioned in the study under the City of Greenfield section of the MSR, under the city's profile. But the discussions we had previously in August, and the discussions weren't in the light of this being a disadvantage unincorporated community. So the discussion in the MSR itself, under the city's discussion, has a sentence referring to these meetings with the Community Water Center and possible extension to these areas. But until we received the comment last Friday, we hadn't included it in the determination section, and that's what we're asking for amending today as part of today's recommendation.
Sure, go ahead.
Really quick.
We've closed public comment, but go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just, to be clear, like, we've been working in this community, yes, for a little while on like trying to create a drinking water project, and we're a very community-based organization, so we start with asking the community what they want and they need and doing some water sampling. So not to take away from the urgency, but we are working with this community for interim solutions to this water problem. But we also are really looking for sustainable long-term solution, and we're the technical assistance provider. So we also work on a lot of the funding sides of things. And we've tried repeatedly to work with the city and communicate with them through several different avenues, and they've been extremely resistant and expressed no interest in being involved until they absolutely have to be. So a lot of this is what you include in the MSR about this community, and this project gives us a little bit of muscle when we go to the city and say, like, look, these are the recommendations from LAFCO. Like, that carries some real weight. So we appreciate the amendments that have been made. And again, like, including these, this community in the sphere of influence just, again, gives a little bit more weight to the problem in the city's eyes from our perspective. Obviously, it's a really big problem for the people who are dealing with it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Back to the dais for action. I'll make a motion, we approve staff's recommendation 23XX resolution. With, it is in the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. All those are in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
One opposition? Should we do a roll call vote since I didn't hear that many ayes on the front end? I'll call for a roll call vote.
Matt, can I just say something? I mean, it all just came, these changes this afternoon. For me, I would like to just kind of, I'm slow. I'd like to be able to process it and try to understand it. And I may have a couple questions for staff. That's why I'm not voting. I just need to totally understand this and what the county's responsibility is in this. If they know these people don't have water, I mean, it just seems like it's such a bigger thing. And maybe if we're uncovering, if we spent the money to send our staff out there and do these studies, maybe we should really take a look at it in our recommendations. That's all. So that's my no.
If I may.
Sure, there's a question.
I just have a concern about, have we put in sufficient language to convey the seriousness and immediacy of the problem?
So Community Water did say that they appreciated our amendments to the resolution.
I heard
But I
that.
mean, from LAFCO's standpoint, this review, have we included sufficient language to stress the immediacy of the problem?
Okay, so I'm gonna pull my motion, so no need for a roll call vote. I'm gonna go ahead and ask for another motion on the table. Do we put a motion out there to continue?
So I think the motion would be to continue to give LAFCO staff another month to consult again with the Community Water and the individuals identified as disadvantaged unincorporated community members to make sure that we're sufficiently including language to allow for structural solutions to ensure that all people have clean drinking water. So it would be allowing more LAFCO staff a little more time to consult and see if there's any additional language that we can craft to include in our.
So is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Okay.
Make it a motion.
That addresses my concern. I'll second that.
Okay.
I just have,
Did you get that, Safrina?
Chair, yes, I had a motion by Commissioner Root to ask you with a second by Commissioner Leffel and a couple other seconds in there. So, but those are the first two that I heard. But
That wasn't it, because did she second it?
I think Commissioner Leffel beat me to the second, but I would second it if she hadn't already done so.
thank you.
I just a little more clarification
Commissioner Church.
onto it. Thank you. It's just, I don't even know how many people we're talking about. Don't have a map onto this. I think, need a little bit outreach to the city. You see where they're really standing on this. So there is a lot of information that really needs to be kind of picked up. And I just wanted to reiterate that.
Commissioner Oglesby.
On the question, I had similar concerns. I know we're all concerned with the water, and I think those are things that need to be reported to the county directly and the health department directly. But I thought it was some clear definitions on, disadvantaged, underserved communities that is not here. And LAFCO staff need to be clear that either these people make it or they don't make it, because we can't say they are to put something in our document when they technically don't make it, right? And so we all agree that we need to figure out ways to get good water over there. But if they don't technically make a DUC, then we should know it here. And then I think the city is saying, well, because that was my original question, why is the city not extending the spear? And I think Executive Director answered it by saying it's very expensive, right? That's not going to change. But how do we get word out to whoever the powers that be that some clean water needs to be worked on? So I'm supportive of the motion.
Commissioner Church.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have to reach out here to ask Community Water, but are we talking about water systems here or individual wells for each of these people?
I think we're trying to connect to a water system.
No, but currently, what do they have? Are they in a small or local or water system as regulated by environmental health drinking water, or these individual wells? Because if they're individual wells, then we're probably, the county doesn't even know about it probably.
Oh, boy. This could very well lead to somebody not being able to live in their house any longer.
Well, no, there's ways to deal with it, but I'm just trying in terms of understanding.
Opening up a can of worms. Commissioner Velasquez?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think for me, just more clarification too. I know that the report does, and I want to thank staff because I think it does have information in there in terms of some of the issues. I think for me, they talk about the annexation, the expanding sphere of influence. Obviously, that's expensive, but it does say that there's an opportunity for the city to enter into an out-of-agency service extension and an MOU to come back. So I think for me, I think staff has done a good job in outlining what some of the alternatives are. I think for me, the question is, why is the city and county not moving forward on it? What are some of the other challenges and issues to be able to prevent that from moving forward? The alternatives are in there, at least, for my sake. I know that staff did put those in there.
Commissioner Bickle, did you have any comments?
It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but LAFCO isn't preventing the hookup of water. That there are alternatives, or there's mechanisms and pathways for them to get water. At this point, the city's not providing it for whatever reason. But it seems like the B for the mission to try and go get water is probably with the city.
I agree. Any other comments from the desk?
I'd like to make a comment since I'm a resident of Greenfield. Recently, the city of Greenfield raised their water rates. They said they were going to do infrastructure improvements and other things with the money for the next 10 years. So perhaps someone can do some research to see what the plans the city of Greenfield are planning to do with the money that they're raising from our water increase.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I think we do have to remember that Greenfield is a member of our agency here, and it's not incumbent on us to tell them how to or what to include in their sphere of influence. I think when you talked about staying in our lane, we have to do some of that here. But I think we're all concerned about someone that doesn't have clean water. Who do we give that information to? Noting it in our report is fine, but trying to coerce the city into doing something they clearly don't have to do, and we really don't have the power to have them do, is kind of misleading and may lead to other issues we don't want to have at this body when other reports come forward.
Right, and also the funding mechanism to make it all happen, the millions of dollars, extend the water outside the service area, current service area. So we have a motion and we have a second. I'll call for a roll call vote since it was a little confusing last time.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Root Askew. Aye. Commissioner Church.
Aye.
Commissioner Leffel.
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby.
Aye.
Commissioner Poitras.
Yes.
Vice Chair Craig.
Yes.
And Chair Gorley.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion.
Okay. So it was voted on to continue and receive a report back from staff at our next meeting. Okay. We'll move on to executive officers' communications. Cal LAFCO wrap up. We could also hear from one of our Cal LAFCO members.
Yes. Chair Gorley, I would like to thank all of our commissioners for the wonderful participation at last week's conference in Monterey. I would particularly like to thank Commissioners Leffel and Commissioner Askew and our Chair Gorley for their extra contributions in ensuring a successful event. My thanks also to our clerk, Safarina Maluki, for being there every day from early till late to support the functions of the conference. The same with Jonathan. He in particular did a wonderful job in stepping up at the last minute when a speaker for one of the panels was unable to present. Jonathan stepped in and presented to over 100 people. So that was wonderful service. And then my other item that I've reported on is to report that Senator Ana Caballero was very successful in securing funding for 3 of our local agencies in the South Monterey County. I was able to attend a presentation ceremony, check presentation ceremony for the Soledad Mission Recreation District. And our Commissioner Ana Velasquez was there, of course, and she was accompanying Ana Caballero in ceremonies held the same day for the city of King and the city of Greenfield. So our gratitude to the senator for her success and her efforts in supporting project funding in the Salinas Valley. And then finally, I'd like to thank the County of Monterey. We're very grateful to be back here in the beautiful Board of Supervisors chambers. The improvements that have been made just seem are first class, and so we're grateful to the county and to the IT team and consultants who provide the audiovisual services to us. So thank you. And our commissioners may have comments on the Cal LAFCO conference.
Supervisor Askew, did you want to add as you're a Cal LAFCO member?
Yeah, I just want to say Monterey puts on a great conference, and folks were really happy to be able to spend time here with us in Monterey for the conference. I'll second Kate's comments, but Safarina, you were everywhere doing everything all the time, and it was seen, and folks really felt your presence. Jonathan did a great job with Commissioner Leffel organizing the tour of the airport. A lot of really positive feedback I heard from Cal LAFCO members as well as just folks at the conference. And the one suggestion that we had for future conferences that come to Monterey were folks want a favorite restaurant list so that they know where to go for dinner when they go out and about. So we'll have to collect your favorite restaurants and have that as a flyer ready to distribute next time we host in Monterey. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments this evening?
I just want to say that one of the sessions that I attended that I thought was really interesting was on MSRs, and that they're kind of toothless, and that they're just kind of, we got to do them, so we do them. And I just don't want us to be that way. I think that this might be a really good time for us to take a look and see how we can make a difference and not just go out and check the boxes that we did in MSR. And so I'm glad I went to that session because it had a lot of good stuff in it. So thanks.
Thank you for your volunteerism.
I just want to make a comment about the mobile workshop that we had. It was wonderful. Thank you for those that put it together. It was really great. And it was behind the scenes of the airport, and I got to see things that normally most people don't get to see. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor Oglesby.
Thank you, Chair. Now, quickly, I just want to say I want to thank the Executive Director for her leadership on hosting, and I know she did it with Director Eskew and Director LAFCO, but it was hers to host. As LAFCO Executive Director, she did a bang-up job. I wasn't as many breakout sessions I would like, but I want to make sure that we put on the record kudos to her because it makes us all look good, as we all know. So I want to just make sure I said that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Velasquez.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo that as well, to say thank you, Kate, for all the work that was done, and Safrina as well for all of your support with us. And I know for me, I had a lot of moving pieces that day, so thank you so much. And I just want to reiterate, I know we didn't have time to comment on the other item because we were focused on the water, but I also attended an MSR workshop, and unlike Commissioner Leffel, for mine, I mean, I was really, it helped me once I reviewed the MSR because it talked about that it really is a tool for us and that it's a really important tool, and how we have these opportunities to have these MSRs to be able to inform us as decision makers on what we need to do. But it's also a tool to be able to change the perception of LAFCO as a watchdog, that this is a partnership, a partner value added tool to help agencies and to help us to be able to look at how do we support them? What is that communication levels that we need to start building with our districts, and how do we really utilize this to ensure that we are really supporting some of the challenges that our districts are going through, and what are the resources and trainings that we can really support them with. So I just want to say on that note, thank you for the information that was provided to us on the MSR for Greenfield. I know that there was a lot of challenges, but I'm happy to see that there is a recommended set of actions that are hopefully going to support the district to be able to move forward to continue to provide those services that are really critical to the communities that it serves. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? I'll move adjournment. Adjourn. Thank you. Have a nice evening, and we'll see you November 27th at 2 p.m.